Hi, it's Maria from Still Dreaming Homestead. Glad you're back with me today. I bought a new book that I'm going to read some stories out of. And it's called Disney's Nursery Rhymes and Fairy Tales. That's what the story looks like. And I know the words are all backwards. There was one that looked pretty good to me, and it's called Walt Disney's Rip Van Goofy. Have any of you ever heard of Rip Van Winkle? Well, they changed this one up to make it Rip Van Goofy. So let's read about him. Once upon a time, in a sleepy little village, there lived a friendly young fellow named Rip Van Goofy. Rip was very popular, and everyone thought there was no one more easygoing or agreeable. Most times you could find him sitting outside the village inn, chatting with his friends Mickey Van Bumble, the schoolmaster, and Horace Vedder, the owner of the inn. They gossiped about all the latest news in the village, commented on stories in the newspaper, and just generally talked the day away. Aside from chatting, Rip also enjoyed napping and fishing, and napping while fishing. In fact, Rip enjoyed just about any activity that did not involve any type of work. One sunny day, Rip Van Goofy, with his new fishing pole in hand, sauntered on up to the inn to see whether Mickey Van Bumble or Horace Vedder wanted to come along with him to his special fishing spot 5 miles outside the village. "Oh, you want to come?" That's probably what he sounded like. "No, I'd best stay here and keep my eye on the inn," said Horace Vedder. "And I don't have a fishing pole," said Mickey Van Bumble. "But you have a good time, old Rip." And so it was that Rip Van Goofy set off alone on that sunny, sunny day. Here's the next picture. He walked 5 miles out of the village along a dusty and dirty road until he reached a large crooked tree. There he left the road and tramped through the woods until he came to a lush green spot on the banks of a trickling stream. Oh, that looks like a good place, doesn't it? "Ah, yes," said Rip as he sat down on the soft grass, dropped his fishing line into the water, and leaned back against the moss-covered rock. "This is the life." He kept one eye on his line for any little nibble, while he closed the other one. He spent a better part of the morning and afternoon half asleep, half awake, until late in the day when the sun began to sink in the horizon. As daylight began to fade, Rip Van Goofy's other eyelid closed, and he fell into a deep, deep sleep. When Rip woke up, the bright morning sunshine was beating down on his face. He sat up and rubbed his eyes. Last he knew it had been early evening. Now it was morning. "Well, golly," he thought. "Could I have really slept here all night long?" Does he look the same to you? Rip reached for his fishing pole and noticed something peculiar about it. The metal reel, which had been quite shiny when he'd fallen asleep, was now completely rusted. And the wooden rod looked much more weather-beaten than he remembered. Those things look quite different. And so does he. Now that's strange, said Rip, reaching up to rub his chin in wonder. That's strange. Even stranger was the feel of the long gray beard he felt on his chin. Rip wondered if he was still asleep and dreaming. How could a fellow grow a foot-long beard overnight? How could he? Confused, Rip Van Goofy rose to his feet, picked up his rusty fishing rod, and began walking back to the village, a walk which took much longer than he expected, since he found he could only move very, very slowly. His entire body felt extraordinarily stiff and sore. Oh, it hurt him when he walked. Eventually, Rip found himself walking through the center of the village. But was this his village, he wondered? Instead of the sleepy little village he remembered, he found a bustling town. Stranger still, Rip Van Goofy thought he knew everyone in the village, but today he didn't recognize a single soul, and no one seemed to know him either. Everyone stopped and stared at Rip as he walked by. What in the world is going on? Rip thought. I need to find Mickey Van Bumble and Horace Vader. And that's what he's headed off to do. He needs to find them now. So Rip Van Goofy walked into the village inn. But when he got to the spot where it should have been, he found that the inn was gone. In its place stood a restaurant named Vedder's Vittles. Vittles is another name for food. And out in the front sat an old fellow in a rocking chair. He is right there. Do you know Horace Vedder? Rip asked the old fellow. The old fellow peered over his glasses at Rip. Horace Vedder used to own this place, the fellow replied, but he sold it to me before he moved away. That was 30 years ago. Rip's head was spinning. Nothing made sense. How could Horace Vedder have left town 30 years ago when Rip had just seen him the day before? Rip was at his wit's end. Well, golly, doesn't anybody here know Rip Van Goofy? He cried out in frustration. Doesn't anybody know him? Rip Van Goofy? Asked the old fellow, rising to his feet. Is that really you? Rip heard something familiar in the old man's voice. Then suddenly he realized it was Mickey Van Bumble? Rip said, puzzled as his friend seemed to change appearance. But you look so old. Mickey Van Bumble chuckled. And so do you, my friend, he replied. Just then Rip turned and caught a glimpse of his own reflection in the restaurant window, and he gasped, "Who was that old man staring back at him?" Who was he? "The last time I saw you was that day you went fishing 40 years ago," Mickey Van Bumble recalled. "When you didn't come back, we went looking for you. But we didn't know where your special fishing spot was." "Where have you been all this time? Where have you been?" Suddenly, as Rip thought about the day's events, all the pieces of the puzzle came together. The rusted fishing reel, the long beard, the stiff joints, the changed village. He had been asleep for 40 years. Then, taking a seat next to his friend, Rip Van Goofy told Mickey Van Bumble the whole remarkable story. Told it to him. Before long, Rip's story had become a legend for miles around. And since Rip Van Goofy was just as easygoing and agreeable as the day when he left, he soon became popular with everyone in town all over again. He and Mickey Van Bumble loved to pass the time of day sitting in front of the restaurant, chatting about the old days and just talking the day away. That's what they used to like to do too. Rip still enjoyed fishing and napping while fishing. But now, before he dozed off, he always made sure there was someone around to wake him up, just in case. He didn't want to wait 40 years again. That would be too long. Well, that was kind of an interesting story. Do you think it could really happen? Could somebody sleep years and years away? Well, probably not that way. But it was a fun story. And I'm glad that Rip found Mickey again, because they were good friends. And I love my friends. And I bet you do too. They're so much fun. And besides playing with them or talking to them or going places with them, maybe even telling secrets together, you can count on a friend. A friend will try to help you if you need it. That's so nice. And the best friend that we have is Jesus. We can always talk to him about anything. That's called prayer. And he loves us so much. He cares about every part of our life. And he wants you to talk to him. Well, it's Maria from Still Dreaming Homestead. I want to pray that you are blessed in the day and in the night. And I want you to remember to keep dreaming, keep a story in your heart. I love you, I really do. And I'll be reading to you again. Good night.